Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, and welcome to the Monday version of the Celtic Down Under, the weekend review, our West Australian edition. We've got a full house tonight with myself, Sean, hosting. We've got Tommy, Anthony, and Paul joining us. Tommy, how was your week and weekend since we last spoke?
Weekend was good. Celtic won, so it's always a nice cherry on the cake at the end of a weekend. The week was just so, just the usual work, slave to the rhythm like we all are, except for the fortunate few. But yeah, nice weekend. Pity the Eagles lost to the Dockers, but I think they ran out of
He's an
players
Eagles
in the end.
fan. Oh, you and Shane. You and Shane can go
So
and sit in your box.
aside from that, good weekend, mate. Celtic won, so I'm very happy.
Hold on, I'm looking to the comments just to see if Shane's going to put his hand up and admit to be listening when I'm shaming him. He's not said anything yet. Anthony, are you Eagles or Dockers in this great Western derby?
Western Derby in WA, Sean.
Yes, you're right.
Just for our Scottish listeners, there's a town called Derby in WA, so it's the Western Derby. Just in case you're wondering what the hell we're on about. No, definitely a Freo supporter. A good win, not getting too carried away, because it was only about 18 Eagles left on the park by the time the game finished, so not exactly getting too carried away with that one. Bit of a mixed bag last weekend for me. First personal training session in 3 years. Spewed my ring up after 15 minutes, but managed to finish it. But I'm still aching 2 days later. And the flip side was yesterday, my wife went down south for a work retreat, so I had the Grand Prix, the Derby, and then Celtic versus Ross County. So I had a great afternoon on the couch watching sport.
Free day. Paul, how was your honeymoon? Welcome back.
Thank you. Yeah, it was great actually. We just got back today. Pretty relaxing down south, mostly Dunsborough and around that area for you guys that know it. So since I was last on, married and become an uncle. So my brother had a little boy. So congratulations to them. Hoping he'll be a Celtic fan because unfortunately his mother is the other lot. So controversial. Fingers crossed. They might not be around by the time he's actually able to watch football, so who knows. Fingers crossed.
What are you going to do to them? Jesus, Paul, that's a threat. You threatening them just because they're Rangers fans? Man.
No, I think Rangers might not be around anymore.
Oh.
Or this incarnation.
I knew what you meant.
There won't be murder in the family. It's not that bad.
So I'm going to kill his parents and adopt him just so he becomes a Celtic fan.
No, my brother's a Celtic fan. Just he's
fair enough.
Less than sensible decision in his family history. But there you go.
Well, hopefully, with the two of you, you can take over that decision. Yeah, okay. So we did have a game at the weekend.
I don't know. That's weird,
Sunday.
To be honest.
So for the 17th time this season, Sevco played before Celtic, which meant they had the advantage of getting the points on the Saturday, while we had to wait till the Sunday. All conspiracy theories abound about why that was, but we travelled up to the Highlands on Sunday, gave us an extra day of rest after the international break. There was a couple of changes to the lineup, with Iwata coming in to start after being injured, and Callum McGregor pushed slightly further forward. Other than that, there was no real great surprises with the back five or the front three, so nothing else too significant there. How did the game overall itself was very... I mean, the first half with Ross County were really, really, really deep. Like Carter Vickers and Starfield were really pushing up high. And then in the second half, we went 1-0 up just in the stroke of half time, and they just flipped it around totally in the second half. And it really became they were pressing high and turning it into a real back and forward game, which was interesting and created some chances that we couldn't quite capitalize on. Like, Anthony, how did you see the game overall on balance? Like, how did you think it played out?
I think the first half in particular sort of was that, the what you sort of worry about when you come back from an international break, players flying all over the world to play football, you lose your bit of rhythm. We have been playing pretty well, or very well, and it probably that first half we didn't quite hit the heights. Small park, they'd sitting deep. The pitch was quite heavy. Ange referred to that a couple of times in his post-match interviews. So there's a few factors there. I think the team had to stay overnight up there as well. So just a few things there, just bubbling away. I kind of felt it took a bit of time for Iwata and McGregor to get a bit of an understanding going. First half, I kind of felt they were both playing the same position, which is not really what we needed when Ross County were just parking behind the ball. So I guess just a bit of teething things there. Kyogo was getting pretty heavily man-marked, which we'll probably touch on in a bit. And then, but in saying that, literally in the first 30 seconds, we had a good chance to score. I mean, you've seen Kyogo get his toe on those, and we could be 1-0 up with it inside of a minute. And that totally changes the complexion of the game right there. I mean, obviously it didn't happen. Created a few chances in that first half, but you have to say it wasn't vintage Celtic. And then obviously we thought we're going in nothing each at half time, and then VAR strikes. But again, I'll let the other lads touch on that. So second half, like you said, Sean, it opened up, and then it became a bit of a different game. And it was one of those ones where I felt we really just needed that second goal just to put it to bed. And obviously it took a wonder strike from wee Bernabei to make that happen near the death. But like I said, I it wasn't surprising, but it's always a hard place to get a result, and we got the 3 points, and we're going to pick the bones out of it now. But I just feel that I wasn't totally surprised by the way we started. Unfortunately.
Yeah, so we tend to home or away get somewhere between 70 to 80% possession. So 75% yesterday was very standard. 22 shots, again, not too far from the mean there. We did have our XG of 2.61. I've seen different, some other places that measured differently, had it actually just over 3 at 3.08. If Mahesh is listening, I'm sure he'll give us whatever his version is in the comments, hopefully. But interestingly, Ross County even came out, we had 9 shots and had an XG of 1.08. So do you think 2-0 was a fair reflection of the score, Paul, or do you think it was a bit skewed in some way?
Now, look, I think, to be honest, we were pretty slack in front of goal. I've taken a different view on it, and I actually take a different view on it, having watched it back again today. Benefits of still having another week off work. I watched the whole game back, completely sober, the Sarvo, and actually picking the bones out of it. On a different day, a bit to Anthony's point, we could have been 3 or 4-0 up at half time. We passed up a number of chances. The flash across from Matt O'Reilly, that you're right, Kyogo could tuck that away. CCV misses a great chance on 10 minutes. Jota misses a great chance after brilliant link-up play between him and AJ down the right-hand side. Kyogo turns another one round the post after Iwata slips him in. And there are 2 or 3 others that crosses made it across the box, and there just wasn't any of that. And that's just the first half. So I think we take any one of those chances in the first half. I've not seen a lot online today. I spent now 2 hours watching the match, so I've not been on Twitter as much as usual, but I would imagine there's a fair amount going around saying we were really poor first half, we were slow, we didn't create enough, we were ponderous or whatever, and we couldn't break them down. I actually think we created enough chances to win a couple of matches in the first half alone, never mind the second half. So actually, it's one of those, I think your view gets coloured when you watch it live because you're in the moment and you've got that nervous energy of you want the victory. So yeah, I don't think 2-0 flattered us. I'm glad we got the second goal, and we'll touch on that in more detail, but it just takes away all the potential controversy of the VAR thing. But yeah, we should have been home and hosed before halftime, really. And once the game opened up, again, we should have scored more than just that one goal in the second half. So I thought the XG that was quoted for us was a bit low. Over 3 seems more realistic based on the amount of chances we created, but in the end, they didn't really put us under too much pressure, and it was a comfortable result, albeit it doesn't really feel and look that way at the time. Yeah, and we've been doing, but I think the last time we only had a 2-0 was with those back-to-back games against Kilmarnock, and since then we have been scoring 3 or more goals, notwithstanding the cup final against Sevco. So we have been pretty good at converting our chances in recent weeks.
I don't know, maybe there's a bit of rustiness from international games. Maybe Ross County, who don't have too many international players, were just well rested and well prepared. Does it say something?
They were really well
Ermine?
drilled. They were really well
Yeah.
drilled. And they, even if they hadn't come out second half and try to push us, again, it would have been one of those things I think we would have worn them down, or they'd have been tired anyway because they put so much into that first 50, 60 minutes.
Yeah. Tommy, do you think that with, again, 2 late goals, both 4 or 5 minutes into injury time in either half, do you think that's about our mentality, or do you think it's about other teams fatiguing physically or mentally? What would you attribute that to? It says statistically 20% of our goals, 1 in 5 goals, come in the last 10 minutes of games. Did that play up yesterday, or what do you think?
Oh, look, I think it's a bit of both, to be honest. I mean, the thing is, when you watch the Celtic team, is that they're going to keep going. And when teams sit in and they're chasing the ball, it does take its toll on you if that's all you're doing. So it's no surprise that we score a lot of goals later on, because you are going to have that lapse in concentration because you're working so hard defensively to try and keep the shape, try and keep that structure that Paul was talking about in terms of Ross County, who they were, really well organised defensively. But it's a bit of both. I mean, but the thing is with Celtic is, they're going to keep going and keep going and keep going. It's whether the other team can keep up. And 9 times out of 10, there's going to be a crack somewhere because the players just aren't at the same level. So for me, it was coming. It was a surprise to get the goal the way it was. But yeah, I mean,
let's talk about that, Tommy.
Yeah.
Do you want to bring it up? You go for it on the goal. Listen, we've both, all 3 of you have alluded to it, so you pick it up, Tommy. Go.
Yeah, well, for me, literally, I had got up after that play. I got up and I went to the toilet. So when I heard Ian Crocker getting a bit excited from a bedroom, I was like, hang on, I thought it was half time. So I was a bit
Ian
surprised.
Crocker was in your bedroom?
Very exciting, let me tell you. You want to hear his voice close up. But yeah, I heard him getting a bit excited. So I obviously charged back out and I was like, what's going on here? And then at first glance, I thought, oh, geez, I'd be pissed off with it. Swore. I'd be disappointed if that was against us. But then when you look at that picture there, you can see his arms clearly away from the body. He's actually trying to pull Carter Vickers, in my opinion. And it's a stonewall penalty. I mean, you can listen to Chris Boyd and all these other people in the media, but for me, that's a stonewall penalty every day of the week. And thankfully, Jota actually stayed up and hit a decent penalty.
And Malcolm Mackay after the game says, it's hit his arm, but it's not fair. What you've just said, you just admitted
his arm's so far away from his body, it's a penalty every day of the week, in my opinion.
The thing that was confusing me was when it happened in real time, I saw it hit his arm and I was like, oh, that looks like it might have been a handball. And then kind of play kept going, so I was like, yeah, okay. And then when they stopped for a VR review and started showing the push against Kyogo in the edge of the box, I was like, oh, I thought I'd seen a handball, but I guess they're looking at something different. And then he goes to the monitor and he's looking at a handball. I'm like, okay, I'm not going mental. There actually was a handball that they're looking at. I thought I was going a bit mental there. Michael Ross in the comments, soft decision. Anthony, was it soft? Was it harsh? What did you make of it?
Well, this is the whole handball rule. I think it needs to be looked at because now you've got VAR, you are going to pick up every single time the ball hits the arm. And then it's like, but I think part of it is if you're jumping up, are you jumping with your arms by your side? I mean, I know you try to reach out to Carter Vickers there. And then the irony there is if Carter Vickers gets a head on it, then it's probably not a penalty because the player can't really do much about that sort of thing because it was such close proximity. But then the other part to that is that Iwata was actually manhandling Kyogo at the edge of the box while this was all happening. And I actually thought that's what the referee, I thought that's what Willie Collin was actually going to go over and have a look at because he was basically getting grappled into the box. So I actually thought that was going to be a penalty anyway. So between the two of them, there's a penalty there. And we've been on the receiving end of some really, the one against Ross County at home with Matt O'Reilly. I mean, so is it the ledger being squared? Is this the checks and balances and it all sort of balances itself out? Probably. I just think the handball rule needs to be looked at. But as the handball rule currently stands, yes, that is a penalty. So that's that is what it is. And the good thing was that Jota slotted it away, and he looked a little bit more confident hitting that one, and he did the last one. So that was good, and nice to win 1-0 up, because like Paul said, we did create a few chances, but it just puts a total different complexion on the game. And Malcolm Mackay had actually gone down the down the tunnel, so he had to come back. He had to come back out, and he's like, "What's going on?" He was ready to give his team talk at nothing each, so he's had to go and rip that up and start again. So good timing from our point of view, that's for sure.
I think Postecoglou was up the tunnel as well. I'd personally written a line through mine to say half time on my notes sheet. So you can see I've got 2 lines there. One from when I thought it was going to be half time, and one from after the penalty. Paul, do you want to comment on the Kyogo? So as Anthony said, he was getting manhandled all game. None of it is going to go to VAR review, because VAR is only going to review if it's a red card offence. So pretty much everything that Jakaviti was doing off the ball, maybe with insight of the referee and doing nothing, but either out of sight somehow of everyone, apart from VAR, who can't intervene, multiple times Kyogo was getting just wrestled to the ground. Do you think that affected his overall game? Do you think that had an impact on the sitter that he missed, or do you think he just had too much time to think about it?
Yeah, look, it was definitely. So the thing about the interactions that they had, obviously it's a bit of a mismatch physically, but Kyogo's not daft either. He is looking for that kind of contact in dangerous areas. And let's not make too many bones about it. In the modern game, you feel any contact, attacking players are going down, particularly in a mismatch. So I think he's quite happy, and he's a brave little guy, right? So he goes looking for that stuff, and he bounces back up and he comes again. My biggest issue with a lot of that stuff was how the commentators mentioned it, particularly through beIN and which is Sky. Walker's commentary was just shocking the whole match. But I think there was one in the second half where Kyogo's running through the middle, and literally the defender just body checks him or shoulder checks him in the chest, which obviously stops him in his tracks. And I think Walker's comment something along the lines of, he just standing his ground. And there's a bit of that all day long. So to me, that's VAR can't get involved, but we've still got 4 other officials between the linesman, the 4th official, and the ref himself. They should be picking up some of that stuff. And at the very least, he should probably walk away with a yellow card for persistent fouling. And if you catch that early on, then he's got less likelihood that he's going to... This is one of my biggest bugbears about yellow cards. They don't get dished out early enough, and it allows players to act like the thug and continue to foul with impunity, because once you've got a yellow card, you've got to stop. Pretty much, you've got to, especially with the way VAR is, and just... You've just got to stop it where it is. So that's frustration. Unbelievably, the only person that got booked yesterday was Malcolm Mackay. And again, Andy Walker lost his rag at that, saying, "Oh, you can't say anything to officials." The 4th official was giving it this afterwards. Every time it cuts the touchline, Mackay was in his ear every single time. So it was he's got a booking for persistent fouling, because he's been just in that guy's ear all afternoon, and he finally got a yellow card. So it is frustrating, it's annoying. With the chance, he should tuck that away, and he probably knows that. He probably has got too much time. I think he's trying to be a bit cute as well. He's trying to sort of perfectly bend it right into the bottom corner when he's got time. The goalkeeper's struggling. There's only one defender there. He could just smash that into the roof of the net, and he's done and dusted. So it didn't make a difference this time. But no, I didn't think it overly affected his performance. I think he's pretty game, and he doesn't mind that kind of physical contact, and he backs himself to sort of get one up on defenders more often than not.
And when I was watching the replay, I was Tommy. I was thinking, actually, the way he's done it, they've both overcommitted, the goalkeeper and the defender. If you're going back, we always have this best since Larsson debate. Larsson would have dummied that and just stepped around him. Is that the point you're going to make, Tommy?
No, you're pretty close, Sean. But the point I was going to make was, I think that we can't understate how difficult the pitch was yesterday, because I think the pitch was really difficult, not only for guys slipping over and that sort of thing, which we saw a lot of, and trying to get your feet. But I think when you actually watch the game back, and I watched only most of the second half earlier, the ball was really bobbling, it was bobbling. And I think it created a lot of problems for both sets of players. And I think that's probably why Kyogo didn't take it first time. And when he got the touch and he controlled it, for me, I was expecting a Lubo finish when we beat Rangers 3-0 in the Martin O'Neill's first season at Ibrox, and Lubo fainted to go to the right, and then he put it in the left-hand corner. And to me, that was the perfect opportunity. I actually thought Kyogo was going to do the same, but for me, that was probably one of the reasons that he took a touch instead of first time, because most times Kyogo's first touch, bang, you know.
Yeah, and look, his body shape absolutely like telegraphed what he was going to do. So that kind of, yeah. And then that was the one thing that Larson was really good at, was he just looked like he was going to curl it and then just step over it, roll his foot over the top of it, that sort of thing.
I guess on the pitch. Sorry, I was just going to say on the pitch, I think it was alluded to earlier, Ange mentioned it a couple of times in his post-match, there was a few players slipping, but there's also a few players that had some what looked like really poor finishes. Iwata skied one second half, Haksabanovic did better, similar. Jota's free kicks weren't great. You know, dead ball should be better, but I just think, you know, Tommy's right. The condition of the pitch was really poor, and you'd expect that maybe some of that is people, you know, just not, you know, a bit rushing it because we're only one up. But I do think the pitch was probably pretty poor, and Maeda and Haksabanovic both struggled with it in terms of keeping their feet. I actually thought both played pretty well when they were on the pitch, but they both lost their footing more than once during the time they were on.
Yeah, and look, we complain when the pitch is too dry, particularly when it's a synthetic surface. And yesterday we were complaining the pitch was too wet. When you're away from Celtic Park, you just don't have control over these things. Craig Levein used to leave the grass long, which is a thing Alex Ferguson used to do in the Premiership. So it's just something you have to roll with in away games and be able to adapt to. And luckily we did. One player, so we're talking a lot about Kyogo here, but statistically speaking, his replacement was one of the best players on the pitch. So O comes off the bench relatively late. It was something like 15 minutes left when he came on. I can't remember. Hold on, let me check my notes.
It was about that, yeah.
Yeah. So 74th minute, he came on. And so he comes on. He has this amazing control out there on turn on the run. Just puts a shot wide. He has a good double chance not long after that. The Ross County goalkeeper does really well from. How impressed were you? Was it more of just an occasion for the way the game was going, or is this guy just maturing into a good player? Anthony, what do you reckon?
Well, Jurgen Klinsmann's shouting the Stars praises. So, I mean, you know, he's a pretty good judge of a centre forward. So he's the South Korea boss now, and he wanted him in his squad. So that says to me that, you know, the Stars got a big future. I think on early evidence, he's an upgrade on Giacomakis. He's got a far better first touch. He's strong without giving away a foul, which was Gio's biggest problem. He was always getting pinged for free kicks, whereas this guy always seems to get away with it. And he was very unlucky not to score. That was a really good double save by Laidlaw. I actually thought he actually had quite a good game. He'd saved one off Greg Taylor in the first half. A couple of really good saves throughout the match. So, I mean, again, that's sort of saved Ross County's blushes a bit as well. But he just gives you a focal point because, you know, it started getting a wee bit, so I'm going to say got hairy near the end, but it just gives Joe Hart the ability just to pump it long, just break the lines. If they're trying to presses, then play it long, play it up to O, bring the players up the park and into the game. And yeah, I think he's reasonably hit the ground running for centre forward. And like I said, I think another day he would have scored. And, you know, I'm keen to see what he can do against Big Golson and Davies next week. Not necessarily starting, but definitely doing them around for their money off the bench at some point this Saturday.
Yeah, and there's a few people shouting him as a first or last scorer next week already. I suspect Kyogo will still start, but I reckon O should get a fair shout to cause some trouble next week. There's lots of other players. It was one of those games that was hard to pick a real clear standout, which is probably the case when you only score 2 goals, because obviously the praise kind of gets drawn towards 2 goals. One that Ange praised out after in the post-game was Tomoki Iwata. What did you make of his performance, Paul? You've watched it back, so I feel like that's the sort of position that he plays in the number 6. I know Kalmak was infringing on it at times, but really he was positioned as the number 6, and Ange referred to it after the game as he looked really strong, was the quote from Ange. Having watched it back, I'd be most interested to hear how it looked on the second viewing as well, Tomoki Iwata.
Yeah, so I thought he played pretty well on first viewing. On second viewing, it gets better. It definitely does. He early on, it was a bit weird. I thought Starfelt was much more comfortable giving him the ball than and Carter Vickers was looking up the line more often. But as the first half wore on, CCV was more keen to pass it into him. I think his movement was a little bit better in terms of finding angles. And then in the second half of the first half, so the second quarter, I guess, he started getting some confidence to break the lines and actually step out of the sixth position and push further up the pitch. Rarely was he looking for a back or sideways pass. He was mostly a bit like Hatate. He was, he's not there yet by any stretch of the imagination, but he was looking for those forward passes and making quite a few of those. He had a great little run to put Kyogo, I think it might have been CCV that slid him in, but then or maybe O'Reilly, I'm not 100% sure. And then he just slipped a great little ball into Kyogo in the channel, and he cut back on his left and just bent it around the post. So I thought he had a really good game. There was a period maybe just into the second half where he sort of lost his way a little bit for a period, and I think that was probably a point more than anywhere where Cal was sort of dropping in. And as that second half progressed, I felt like McGregor basically came in and played next to him. And then we sort of played a double pivot for a chunk of that last bit of the second half. But they were both pushing forward at that point. So they were just timing who was going and who was staying, which they hadn't really got the handle on that in the first half. So from about sort of 65, 70 minutes onwards, he was back to breaking forward alternatively with Cal, and he was looking for those forward passes up the line. And he even got in the box and caused a bit of problems there as well. So I was really impressed with him. He had the odd slack pass, and he gave away possession a couple of times, but generally for a first 90 minutes, I was pretty impressed, and I'm really interested to see where things go for him and us as a team generally. There's a lot of competition for places in there. And, I think people felt like he could be the answer to 6 potentially and free up Cal to play further forward. I actually thought McGregor was better when he dropped deeper because he's got the game in front of him. He's able to sort of decide when to pass it and when to burst forward and break past players and make that space and create attacks. So it's pretty exciting to have another talent to add into the midfield. But I thought it was a good game and be interested to see how things progress from here.
Yeah, and speaking in the midfield, Tommy, what did you make of O'Reilly's performance? He's actually been, in our group chat, it's been a bit divisive, actually, to be honest, with some people saying that he had a good game yesterday, some others questioning his energy levels. What do you reckon? Do you reckon he's straight back out next week? Do you reckon he had a good game yesterday? What do you reckon?
It's quite interesting, actually, because I've thought for a while, since he's come back into the team and sort of playing a bit further forward, that he's not as effective as he was when he was playing the number 6 role when Calmac was out. Like, for me, he'd done a really important role for us there. And watching him yesterday, I think his best moments actually came a bit deeper in the park. Like, he actually won the ball back a few times, and he played one fantastic pass that put Maeda in for Kyogo's sitter. So I think he'll end up being a more deep line midfielder than the way we're trying to play him at the moment. I think we're trying to play him like as an attacking midfielder, obviously. And for me, I think his best position will end up being closer to the number 6 role. But yesterday, there was a few points that I thought, I think he's getting back, because I think he's sort of been off it a little bit. But there was one point yesterday where he played the pass to Maeda, got Maeda in, and then there was a point where he actually got forward and lovely bit of footwork on the in the inside of the box, took the guy on, put a great ball across the box. And I was thinking, he's actually getting back. It's like any of these guys, in my opinion. Like, if you've been sitting on the bench and be coming off for 15 minutes, 10 minutes here and there, it's hard to get a bit of a rhythm. But yesterday, I actually felt like he was getting back to a bit of a rhythm and actually making a contribution in the second half. So, for me, he's still a quality player. The issue is, as I said, I think his best position will end up being more deep line. And we've got Iwata, who we've just spoke about, and we've got Calmac, that's his best position at the moment. So it's where do you fit him in if Rio and Moya fit? So that's one thing I do think we missed yesterday, is we missed that creativity from Moy and Hatari. They're just a bit more forward thinking, a bit more dynamic. O'Reilly, I just think that he's probably more suited to the deep line role, and I'm not sure if there's a spot from there.
Do you think he starts next week, or do you think Moy or Tati come back in half fit?
For me, if the fit Moy and Hatari have to come in for me, like I felt in the first half yesterday, we really missed Moy and Hatari, that creativity, like they're just a bit more of a spark about them. For me, it was a little bit more one-paced. Calmac playing a little bit further forward, and it just didn't seem to work particularly in the first half. But the second half, we sort of got it together. Wata and McGregor seemed to link up a bit better. But for me, if you've got Moy and Hatari fit, there's no doubts they've got to start, in my opinion.
Yeah, it's hard to tell when you can't see them at training, can't see the fitness. But yeah, if you're right, if they are available, you probably prefer them. One player that stood out in recent weeks and stood out again yesterday was singled out for praise on the BBC coverage, and we can talk as well about his penalty and the fact that he hit the bar in about the 91st minute, hits the bar, and then he technically gets credited with an assist for the final goal, the Bernabei goal. I hadn't actually, it happened so fast, and it was late and I was worked up, and I hadn't actually realised until I seen it back this morning that what he does is he does a no-look back heel pass that then Haksabanovic does a dummy, and it's such a good back heel and dummy that Iwata doesn't even read it, and he gets dummied as well, and then Bernabei picks it up and smashes it in. But if you actually watch that back, the Jota, the back heel to set up that final goal is particularly impressive. Anthony, did you enjoy Jota's overall performance yesterday? Did it need that goal to really cap what it looked like, or did he even deserve that assist for the fact that it's gone through two players before it even gets to your man, and the fact they didn't even look? Because I don't think you can say he was trying to pick out Bernabei.
Well, I think Joe Hart said it best in one of the audio commentaries on their games, that David Turnbull seems to pick up some easy assists, just rolling the ball to Jota to plonk it, 30 yards in the top corner or whatever. So I think a look away pass that ends up, finding Bernabei, I think that's fair game. I think Jota, for me, like, he tries to grab the game by the scruff of the neck. Whether he's successful or not, there's varying degrees, and sometimes it comes off, and sometimes, like, his chance off AJ, he sort of skied it, and his free kick was well over the bar and all the rest of it. So sometimes it doesn't come off, but I think what I've seen in the last 6 weeks, 7 weeks, is that he's lifted a gear to the point where, like, if things aren't going well, he's willing to take it upon himself to try and force the issue, try and create a chance, get on the end of a chance, do something to try and influence the game. And I think as a winger, really, that's all you can do. The chances will come, and he was very unlucky with that shot. I mean, if that had sailed in, I mean, that's a very worthy sealer. Obviously Bernabei being the hero, but that could easily have been the sealer, and you'd have went, well, that's just capped off a good performance for Jota, brace. So yeah, I don't have any real problems. I thought, the first half, I think there was many, above average performances. I thought it was much for muchness, but he, for me, felt that he was one of the ones that really tried to, force the issue. And like I said, as long as I'm seeing that, then, I think they keep a jersey, and they keep playing the following week.
Did you enjoy the Bernabei finish? Sorry, Tommy, go.
No, sorry. One thing I was just going to say on Jota today is I completely echo what Anthony said. I think we spoke about it before on this show, is that it's his work rate for the team, and he just does not stop. He'll always try. He's not all tricks and flicks. But I had a look at his stats today, and this season he's played 28 games, and he's got 10 goals and 9 assists, and the whole in the league. And the whole of last season he played 29 games, and he had 10 goals and 10 assists. I remember listening when we actually signed him. One of the doubts that we had about him, potentially from a scouting report somewhere else, was that he didn't have any end product. And for me, like, he has got the end product, and he's consistent with it. But it's also that consistency of effort as well, which is so important to the team, as Anthony pointed out.
Did you, Paul? Did you think Jota? Were you nervous before Jota took the penalty? How nervous were you after seeing the one he took against Hibs?
I was a little
compared to Bernabei's finish, who is allegedly doing it all the time at training. Allegedly.
Yeah, look, I was a little bit nervous, but I'd had a few beers, so I was hopeful it would be a better effort than the last one. And he just did the classic smash it down the middle and hope for the best. And the keeper looked a bit disappointed. But if you save them and you've dived, it's because you've managed to flick a toe on it and you've got a bit lucky, unless you stand in the middle of the goal, which there's probably an argument for doing that, because you'd probably save more doing that. But Joe Hart would probably save more if he just stood still than he does in his normal record. And just on Jota, I think like he didn't. What I would say about him is, just to add to what the guys were saying, I do agree with what's been said. I don't think he had his best game by any stretch of the imagination. As Ange was getting a bit frustrated with, there was more than one pass that went astray. Jota was guilty 2 or 3 times across the match, and a few others were as well. And it just added to that bit of disjointedness, particularly first half. But to what the guys have said, he keeps going. He digs in. There's a few times he won the ball back, and we've seen that in recent weeks as well. So yeah, I thought he had a pretty good game, albeit not completely firing on all cylinders, and he went to the end. Bernabei's finish is I'm not going to let down. It's a world-class strike, to be honest. He picks up the no-look pass is brilliant. He's definitely getting an assist for that. If he's not attending to pick up Bernabei, he's hoping to probably pick out Haksabanovic. He dummies it. You're right. I think Iwata isn't really done by the dummy, but he's just not. He's not coming onto that perfectly. So he does well actually to get out of the way. And Bernabei just takes one to get it out, and then he absolutely smashes it in the top corner with a bit of outside bend off the left foot and taking it away from the keeper. It's celebration's great. Puts the cap on the game. And I actually thought I've probably been in our group chat. I've been one of the more lone voices to give him a crack, and say that he's probably not been as bad as some have made out. And I know that across the support, there's been a lot of grief he's got until he came back recently. I thought he's just gone up a level again. He just gave a level of drive in that last 35 minutes that he came on that was missing a little bit. He piled forward. He made runs off the ball. He made space for other players. He linked up really well with Haksabanovic and Cal McGregor. I just thought he had a really good game. And even defensively, he probably 1 or 2 went astray, but that wasn't uncommon with the amount of pressure that was coming on from Ross County's second half. Like even CCV was giving the ball away. And Cal gave it away, and Greg Taylor gave it away before Bernabei came on. So, I thought Bernabei had a cracking game, and he just put the tin lid on it with an absolute world-class strike.
Yeah, and Angelo in the comments is saying, well, now that he's hit a little bit of form, put him up for sale for 7 mil and get rid of him. Whereas Michael Ross is saying he likes wee Bernie. And I think nobody's really disputing his attacking efficacy and efforts. I think it's more of his defensive area and how he is with distributing the ball. Although I did think he did well alongside Haksabanovic yesterday and did get a few good passes into him. An earlier comment from Michael Ross was also Hope Taylor's fit. So that was obviously a big story from yesterday, was that Greg Taylor had a clash of knees in what was a fairly innocuous challenge. It was probably a free kick, but certainly nothing more. And he has to leave the pitch. And obviously he's had a lot of injury concerns lately, but I don't think they've been around the knee. So hopefully that's an unrelated thing that's just going to be a dead leg, which is what Ange said, and he's going to be able to run it off, because he was having a good game as well. In the first half, he hits the post with his right foot. He draws a good save from Ross Laidlaw, and it was just generally having the same level of 7 or 8 out of 10 that he always has. But one person that hopefully didn't, but may have gone unnoticed yesterday that I want to talk about was Alistair Johnston. Now, I thought his efforts, there was one particular moment in the first half where he just kept persevering, just got all the way to the byline, despite Ross County players trying to take him out. Even times when he wasn't taking on his man, he was just putting in these great cross balls. Like what did you make of his performance yesterday, Anthony, and how happy are you with him since he signed? Has he progressed? Has he been getting better and better, or has he just been that good since the start? What do you reckon?
I know we're going to save this to the end, but spoiler alert, he was my man of the match. He was Mr. Consistent yesterday. He was probably the one that all through the game, first half, second half, gave you absolutely everything for the full 98 minutes or however long we end up playing that second half. Don't know how they come up with 8 minutes injury time. But anyway, that particular passage of play where he bounced off 2 Ross County players, managed to get the ball across. Was that the same one he set Jota up with, or was that another? It was the same one.
Jota chance, yeah.
So that one, and then just like he's crossing, that he fizzed a couple of crossing dives in Maeda. I mean, he'll be getting nightmares from that one in the second half. We should have slid on the end of that, missed that. He's added crossing and overlapping to his game. Like, and he came in against Rangers, it was defensive and he was solid, sound defensively. But now he's adding this offense to his game. The guy's got an engine. The guy's not afraid of anything. He is stuck in. He's going to be if he's not a Celtic favourite amongst the fans already, he's going to be by the end of the season, because he's just got the right personality. He's intelligent. I did an interview with him on Celtic TV. He comes across really, really well. He's a smart guy, and he's enjoying his football, and he's obviously enjoying being in Scotland. So, he's just, you'd have thought replacing Juranovic would have been a tough ask, because we all thought how good a player he was, but I think we've got a younger model. He's probably got a better work rate. And he's now starting to show some of the offensive attributes, those crosses and cutting in and giving that overlap, which just is which is the Ange game. I mean, you need that from your fullbacks. So no, he was definitely an 8, 9 out of 10. Yes, he was definitely the man of the match, best player on the park.
Yeah, there was the Canadian game last week. There was some Canadian fans with a picture of Alistair Johnston with the Ballon d'Or trophy, which reminded me of the whole Effie Ambrose Ballon d'Or chat, which kind of links into one of the last players I want to talk about. And Tommy, Paul, I'll let you both fight over this one, because everyone knows my feelings on the general performance and ability of our Swedish centre-back, Carl Starfelt. Who would like first dibs on this one?
I've got a bit to say on it, but if Tommy's got a bit,
I'll probably be shorter than you. I think I'll be shorter than you, Paul. So I'll just go first. Yeah, look, I completely understand why so many Celtic supporters are uncomfortable with Starfelt. He makes me uncomfortable sometimes as well. You look at the moment yesterday when Joe Hart's coming out for the ball, and you're thinking, why are you not letting the ball run through? You got the part in the second half, early at the start of the second half, when they were pressing, he's putting us under pressure. He does a silly pass to Karavikas, puts us under pressure. But I think you've got to remember as well that he's actually a really good defender. He is a really good defender, and he's part of the best defence in the Scottish League over the last couple of years. He's a Swedish international. And for me, like, a lot of the times the balls were coming in at the box yesterday. Who's clearing them? Starfelt, maybe CCV. He's a cracking defender. He's not so good on the ball. But there was a couple of times yesterday as well when the strikers tried to outmuscle him and try to outpace him. And he got there and he won it, and they ended up fouling him. So for me, like, I get it, understand it, but I'd rather have him than some other defenders. Kobayashi actually might end up being better than him, because he's obviously naturally left-sided. And that might be an issue in terms of Starfelt's uncomfortableness with the ball on the left-hand side. But for me, he's a first pick every week. Cracking defender. But yes, he's got a bomb scare moment in him. I'll let you go, Paul.
Yeah, thanks, Tommy. And all of that's true, right? We know that. He's playing out of position. Does Carter Vickers look as good as he is if he's asked to play on the left-hand side of defence? Just a point. I've be honest, I've not heard that mentioned anywhere else. I'm not saying it's a completely unique thought, but we all think Carter Vickers is an absolute Rolls Royce, and he is, because he's strong and he can stroll out of defence. But on the watch back today, one of the things I wanted to look at was Starfelt's performance. So I spent the majority of that game keeping an eye on what he did. First half, eight run forward runs out of defence. 3 or 4 more, 4 or 5 more than Carter Vickers. And we usually think that Carter Vickers is a player that steps out of defence and plays those forward passes if no one else is available to do it. They shut down the inverted fullbacks yesterday, and it was super tight. The only players that had any time and space on the ball were the 2 centre-backs. And more often than not, it was Starfelt that was the player that took that forward. Agreeing with Tommy, he wins everything pretty much in the air. There was a couple of crosses first and second half flashed across the box. It's him that gets a toe or a leg on it to take it out and clear the danger. The problems that he comes from, I think, are purely from the fact that he's playing on the wrong side. And he isn't as much of a footballer. He's more of a big stopper. But do you want your defenders to be able to defend? If Kobayashi's in there next to CCV, is he winning every header against 6'7" Jordan White or whatever he is? I doubt it. But Starfelt was winning way more than his fair share. And look, not putting anything down on CCV, his performance was the usual you'd expect from him. He actually did. I looked at like mistakes. He made 3 or 4 mistakes as well.
That's what I was going to say.
They weren't as crucial, but he gave the ball away in our final third 2 or 3 times second half under pressure, and there was a casual pass that he played out of the pitch to Jota the first half, which Ange wasn't pleased about. So, look, I think Starfelt, because his are more obvious and sometimes do potentially give up a chance, there's just a whole wave from the support that just have had enough of it and don't like him, and maybe didn't take to him particularly well at the very beginning. I really rate him. He'd be first. He's a first name on the team sheet for me as well. One of the really disappointing things about the Champions League outings was that we never got to see him and CCV play together. We know that they've got a brilliant record in the league. Yeah, look, if he was, I think I said this in the group chat, if he was completely flawless, he's not playing for us. He's somewhere else, and we've sold him for multi-million pounds. So I think enjoy him while we can. I think somebody will buy him and play him on the right-hand side of defence, and I think you'll see he's an even better defender than we've already seen.
I definitely think there's a wee bit of a bias where like we seem to pick out every one of his mistakes, whereas CCV's mistakes get swept under the rug, especially yesterday. So yeah, but
Peter
to be continued.
Yeah, and look, we probably will have that conversation. It's hard, isn't it, to be beside Carter Vickers, but I still get frustrated. It still reminds me of Oliver Tabele or Joseph Simunovic or
that's harsh.
No chance. No way.
I'm calling it, man. Not like everyone loves
disagree.
Joseph Simunovic because he does one big tackle on Kenny Miller, but if you watch back the highlights of his games, man, he had one big mistake in him every game. Starfelt's the same. Sometimes it gets punished, sometimes it doesn't. And I agree with what Peter's saying about maybe CCV and even Johnson and Iwata were giving the ball away sometimes yesterday. That's what happens when you get put under high pressure in an away game. But Starfelt's just stand out so more, and they're just more frequent. But I do also agree with what you're saying that he is one of the best defenders in Scotland. I don't disagree with that. And in the last 10 minutes of the game yesterday, he was pretty heroic, to be honest, in the last 10 minutes. And that stood out for me more than anything. Tommy?
The fact you mentioned Oliver Tabele and Carl Starfelt in the same sentence sort of worries me. Because they're sort of different. You can mention Oliver Tabele and maybe someone like, let me think, maybe Josh Thompson in the same sentence. But, Starfelt to me is in a completely different level to Oliver Tabele. But anyway, that was for humour value, mate.
Oliver Tabele had a career in the EPL after he left Celtic, so I don't know if that's objectively true, but I get what you're saying.
Yeah, maybe subjective. Maybe it is.
Yeah. One other player before we move on to the other news I'd like to talk about is the player who got a whole 3 minutes yesterday to add to his 3 minutes against Hibs. Are we disappointed, guys, that Rocco Vata is only getting 3 minutes, or is it just a consequence of circumstance? Would we have seen him coming on at 74 minutes if the game had been more comfortable? Is this a concern? He turns 18 in 2 weeks. Should we be worried about these rumours linking him with moves away? Anthony?
I think the game didn't lend itself to him coming on earlier. Even Ange made his subs a lot later than he normally does, because I think he didn't have as many options to choose from the bench. We had 2 centre-halves on the bench. He had to make a change for Greg Taylor as well. So I kind of think the usual 60-minute triple substitution didn't really sort of transpire the way it normally does. And the game's a bit tighter. So just one of those things. He obviously missed out playing for Celtic B yesterday as well, because they were playing at the same time or just after. But he came on. He probably had a really good chance to score as well. I mean, if he'd have thrown himself at that delivery, it was literally the last kick of the game, he could have ended up with a goal. So just needs to stay on his toes and keep performing. He's got a good family around him. Like obviously Rudy's part of the Celtic setup and that. So you really hope that he gets another season at Celtic at least to hopefully make that break out of the first team. If a batter goes, or there is an opportunity there, and he becomes the next sort of winger, next cab off the rank, then he's going to get opportunities. So he just needs to keep plugging away. And I think he's only just back from injury as well, because I don't think he's really been around. So I mean, to be straight back at the first team, yeah, that says a lot in my book as far as I'm concerned.
Yep, I think you're right, and I hope to get to see him in flesh. And you mentioned there the B team, which where Vata would have been appearing if he hadn't been in the first team. But even with Vata appearing for the first team, the B team still had a brilliant result at the weekend. They went to Ibrox and beat Sevco 3-1. So they were 1-0 down, and then we get I don't actually have the sequence of these events in front of me, but the Sevco goalkeeper gets a red card. We get 2 great finishes by Ben Quinn, which I have seen, and you should check them out on the Unique Angles camera if you haven't seen them. One really good kind of scissor kick from close range, which was good improvisation, and another one which is just good tight angle finish through a bunch of bodies, and that puts us 2-1 up after being 1-0 down. I think at that point Sevco get a second red for 2 yellows, and then I think was it 3-1 or 2-1 when they get their third red card. Basically, they finished.
It's 3-1 first, and then Adam Devine has a horrendous challenge late on and gets a straight red.
Yeah. So Paul, if you've seen it, can you comment on it?
So I had a good look to try and find some highlights on this, and all I could find, the Unique Angle only has our goals, so I couldn't find the Rangers goal or the sending offs. So I found some little Rangers fans little vlog online, and it's just from his seat, which so some of the footage is pretty bad, but the Rangers goal, the opener looked like a cracker hit from outside the box into the top corner. The red cards, he didn't have a clue what happened with the goalie, but it looked like maybe he handled outside of the box. The other one was 2 yellows, didn't see much there. And then it's quite far away in the footage, but it looks like Devine's just lost his head and flown in on a tackle when the ball's already going away, and he gets a straight red for that. And that's just to me, that's just a lack of discipline, which we've seen that a bit from that lot over the last week or so. If we're talking about headbutts on touchlines and women's football, and then late apologies much later. So not really a huge surprise for them to be lacking discipline or not living up to setting their standards. Yeah,
standards, Paul. Standards.
Yeah,
the one thing I would say about those goals was it did look like the B team is now playing handball. The way the ball's getting zipped around, and all the goals came from crosses out wide. So it does seem to me that they've actually started to implement how that's obviously from highlights of goals, but it did all 3 goals look like Celtic first team goals. If you sort of watch
lots of short corner, like on the footage, even from this guy's seat, in the stand, you could see that pretty much every corner we'd taken it short, which I guess again is at that level you want them to keep the ball and move it and pass it rather than just throw it into the box and hope your biggest guy is bigger than their biggest guy. So yeah, I think you're right. I think that's kind of going to be flowing through the club now, and that's what I'm reading elsewhere as well. So I think that bodes well for the future.
Yeah, I've noticed in the last few months that the B team have been really had an uptick in performances. Peter McGowan's commenting on the goal from Ben Quinn. He's falling, but somehow hooked it into the net. That's the first. As much as I've seen Adam Brooks do some quality things, it's the first real quality I've seen from Ben Quinn. Not that I've seen too much of him. I think he's slightly younger. Angelo saying Dane Murray's back, so another one that we'd hope could make the step up, hopefully at some point next year. And cup final, very cup final-esque in terms of the goals. So a lot of people getting excited about the B team. I think a lot of the Sevco fans are getting really down because that's like 8 games in a row across different levels and sexes where they've failed to beat us. So we've really got a bit of an Indian sign over them at the moment. Something else that happened literally immediately after the Celtic game yesterday was that 2 managers got sacked in England. One of them very related to Celtic, and both of them partially related to Celtic in the fact that every vacancy that comes up in the EPL has got Andrew Postecoglou's name on it before the sacking has even been issued. Tommy, what do you make of this situation?
Well, I think I saw on Twitter last night that it took Sky Sports about 15 seconds to link Ange Postecoglou live on air to the was it the Leicester job or the Chelsea job? I'm not sure, but yeah, look, I mean, it's going to happen when a Celtic manager is successful. I mean, you just need to look at what he's done with their club, and it's one of the things that makes me more confident that he's not more like a Brendan Rodgers. Brendan Rodgers for me was always about Brendan Rodgers. Ange Postecoglou for me, well, he's about Ange Postecoglou to a certain extent. He's more about creating things and creating legacies and these sort of things. And look, eventually he might go on to the English Premier League or abroad. But I think he's still got unfinished business here at Celtic, and I'm really not that concerned through this summer about losing him. I think he's got unfinished business with the Champions League with Celtic. I think this season will sort of gnaw at him a little bit. And I just think that he will be here for at least another season. It's good for us if there's these links, because he's obviously doing a great job and everyone can see the great job he's doing. But for me, it doesn't overly concern me, whereas with someone like Brendan Rodgers, it would definitely concern you. I mean, when Leicester came in for him, it was like, no, but you knew there was something going on in the background. I just don't get that feeling with Ange Postecoglou. I feel that he's just in a different place, and it doesn't really concern me too much.
Yeah, I think a lot of it is, as Peter said in the comments, is the Sevco supporting media try to wish him away, just
Definitely.
to
Wishful thinking.
Get him away from their hair. Yeah. In terms of other managerial things going on, I personally find myself less and less interested in what's going on in England every week, the more that basket case continues to be a basket case. So I was quite happy that Anthony added to the run sheet a discussion point about the Aberdeen and Aberdeen and Hearts situation. Anthony.
Well, the worm turns fairly quickly in Scottish football, because, I mean, everyone would have said about a month ago that Aberdeen were having an absolute dreadful season. They've sacked the manager. It's all doom and gloom. But basically in the last 5 league matches, they've won 4. So yay for Barry Robson. So he's been, he's interim manager till the end of the season. I think he's putting his hand up for the job full time. And then, the flip side to that is Hearts have only won 1 in 5 in the league. So, all of a sudden, Robbie Nielsen's getting graffiti on the club crest and all this sort of stuff. So, they're out for him. I mean, admittedly, Hearts have got a few injuries at the moment, and I think Xander Clark got injured on the weekend as well. So that's him down 2 first-choice goalkeepers. But couldn't happen to a nicer guy. But, and now Aberdeen are only 1 point behind. So for their absolute dreadful season, they're only 1 point behind third. It's just Scottish football is bonkers when you actually, if you actually like, all it takes is a wee bit of a run, and all of a sudden you're nearly third. So interesting times.
It's pure entertainment up here in Scotland, and we wish former Celtic player Barry Robson all the best, and former and current and future pain in the arse Robbie Nielsen all the worst. Any comments on either of those guys before we run round with the wrap up? Paul, Tommy?
Oh, look, I watched the highlights of both games, which is probably overstating things somewhat. They didn't look like great games in either case.
The lights of those games.
But in the Dons game, Considine gets sent off on VAR for what looks like a pretty weak pullback on Duke, which we know that he loves to go down. So by all accounts, that was, the footage I saw didn't look that clear cut, but apparently if you read any report following it, it was a pretty straightforward decision. A red card on his birthday, and I think he got a red card against us on his 500th appearance or something like that. So he's obviously likes these milestone red cards. And Aberdeen huffed and puffed after being, for the rest of the game, and managed to get a pretty weird goal where they hit it towards the goal and the keeper sort of caught it and then dropped it and flopped it in, and it went down as an own goal against the goalkeeper. And Shinnie got himself sent off for 2 yellows, just being Shinnie. So I don't think they're spectacular, but obviously they are on a decent run. Hearts, meanwhile, Shanklin scored first, and they were up 1-0 against Kelly, and then managed to proceed to lose 2 pretty shocking goals with Xander Clark, culpable at both. So maybe isn't the worst thing in the world if he's out for a bit. Maybe they can find a goalkeeper that's better than him. And then another VAR decision, I think maybe McKenzie got sent off on about 60 minutes for a kind of follow through studs on the knee tackle. He did win the ball, but he straight leg came through, and on VAR it was decided it was red. It probably was. He endangered an opponent, so he probably had to walk for that.
Let's not go back into any VAR. We've discussed it already.
I know, and look, that's fine. And no, I think they probably get both those decisions right from what I'm reading.
We're praising
and
VAR.
from what I'm
Okay.
saying. So I'm still for VAR. Like we just need to get better operators. And so yeah, look, so and then even against 10 men, Hearts couldn't muster an equaliser. So they're in free fall. They look shocking. Nobody is going to be sad in our support that that's the case. And on the balance of form, you would say that the Dons are probably favourites to take that third spot at the moment. But as we just said, things can turn around pretty quickly in Scottish football. So we'll wait and see. There's still a fair bit to go.
And I think a lot of the kind of what we're talking about, this kind of unpredictability and going on a run of form and stuff like that, and even losing your job, a lot of it kind of relies on the fact that we only have 12 teams, so you can just be heading towards the relegation spot after a short bad run of form. So like there's always a case there to be made for having a larger top flight, and how that would help managers stay in job, how it would help younger players get more game time, etc., more job security. So, but what's more important in the short term for us is how relevant the form of these teams are, because we only have 8 league games left, and this is the teams we're going to be playing. We're going to be playing Aberdeen, we're going to be playing Hearts, we're going to be playing Hibs, but Sevco twice. Okay, so we do. The majority of our remaining games are going to be against these teams, so we do need to be keeping an eye on that. But what we'll do is we'll just circle back to finish up, and we're over an hour, so we'll circle back and finish on Celtic. And what we'll do is we'll just go around and we'll just see Anthony spoilers, but we'll get our man of the match votes for the Ross County Celtic win at the weekend to wrap up. Tommy, who was your man of the match at Dingwall?
If I watched it yesterday, which I did, and I just watched it live, I would have said Johnston. But watching it back today, I would probably go Jota. Jota just kept going, trying to create things and hit the bar. Had some great passes, trying to play people in. Never stopped. The look away pass at the end is just beautiful. Bit fortunate with the finish from Bernabei, I guess. But for me, I would have given Jota the man of the match, just ahead of Johnston.
Paul?
I'm going to be controversial and give it to a substitute. I'm giving it to Berna. I just thought his energy in that 30-35 minutes cameo was brilliant. He topped it off with a cracking goal. And maybe the others suffer from the fact that they'd play whole 90 minutes and there was a bit more to pick out the bones of mistakes as well as the upsides. So I'm going Bernabei with honourable mentions to Iwata, Jota, AJ and O, because I thought O's performance off the bench was pretty spectacular as well. So yeah, that's my view.
Anthony?
Well, I'll stick with AJ. Just the whole 98-minute performance. So I just felt for the whole match he was best player on the park across the whole game, so deserving of man of the match. And
I totally agree with pretty much everything you three guys have said on that. And Peter McGowan in the comments saying Johnston and O were top for him. I thought O was just a goal away from, again, being a great shout for man of the match. Andrew Reid saying Johnston. On balance, I'm going to go also with Alistair Johnston. Even though I did think O and Bernabei had great contributions, I thought Iwata was a great shout as well. And Jota also. But just tough game when you only win 2-0, and so I'll go with Johnston for that reason. So other than that, we'll just wrap up there unless anyone's got any final comments that I've missed out, forgot to mention.
One last thing.
Everyone wants one last thing. Okay,
I was just going to say, Berna, a couple of stats on Bernabei's goal, 35th goal in the last 15 minutes this season in all competitions. And I think he's the 21st different scorer we've had this season as well. But correct me if I'm wrong.
I do believe he was added to the list. I didn't remember if it was 21st or 22nd.
I think CCV was 20, so I think he's 21.
Yeah. Tommy?
I was just going to say we should mention Scotland's couple of results during the week. International football's never been huge to me. I'm almost Celtic first and always, but I think the fact that our captain was such a key player and 2 great results merits the mention.
Yep, definitely. And that was kind of, I forgot to mention that earlier when we were talking about the mental fatigue thing. That was something that Steve Clark had been praising his players for, was their mental resiliency against Spain, not just their physical output. Anthony, final thoughts?
I just hope we still up the Huns on the weekend. So bring them on Saturday and let's just get into them and let's wrap this league title up.
That's it. Yeah, let's get into Johnny Fox's at the weekend and hopefully we'll have a something to celebrate.
Yeah, let us in, Paddy. Yeah.
That's it. If we can get us on the guest list, Davey, just give us a shout. Just kidding, I'm a member. Other than that, we'll just call it a night and say hail, hail, and best of luck. Oh, sorry, just can everyone please tune in to the Tuesday and Wednesday show, like and subscribe on all the socials, and other than that, have a good week and look forward to Saturday. Hail, hail.
Hail, hail.
Hail, hail. Catch you guys.
See ya.